Miles to Go by David Weber. Chapter 1.
I rouse from low-level autonomous standby mode to normal readiness for my regularly scheduled update. Awareness spreads through me and I devote 0.0347 seconds to standard diagnostics checks. All systems report nominal, but I detect an anomaly in number 21 bogey in my aft outboard port tread, and I activate a depot sensor to scan my suspension. A parica, one of the creatures Santa Cruz erroneously called birds, has built its nest in the upper angle of the bogey wheel torsion arm. This indicates that the depot's environmental integrity has been breached, and I command the central computer to execute an examination of all access points. The depot computer net lacks my awareness, but it is an efficient system within its own limitations. It locates the environmental breach in 3.0062 seconds. Maintenance and repair number 73 ventilators cover has been forced open by an intruding cable vine, thus permitting the Parica to gain access. I command the depot computer to dispatch Automex to repair the hatch cover. A further 0.0004 seconds of analysis suggests to me the possibility of an occurrence should have been allowed for in the depot computer's original programming, and I devote 0.0035 seconds to the creation of a press execution file to establish a continued monitoring of all depot access points and to enable automatic repair responses in the event of future fails of integrity. These actions have consumed 3.044404 seconds since resumption of normal alert readiness, and I return to my initial examination of the Parica nest. Its presence constitutes no impediment to combat efficiency, yet the sensors detect live young in the nest. I devote an additional 0.0072 seconds to consideration of alternatives, then command the depot computer's remote to remove the nest and transfer it to an exterior position of safety near the repaired ventilator cover. I receive the depot's computer's acknowledgement of my instructions and return to the second phase of the situation update. My internal chrono confirms that 49 years, 8 months, 3 days, 21 hours, 17 minutes, and 14.6 seconds, standard reckoning, have now elapsed since my commander ordered me to assume low-level autonomous standby to await for her replacement. This is an unacceptable period for a unit of the line to remain in active duty status without human supervision, and I check the depot comm files once more. No updated sitrep or other message to explain the delay has been received during my time at standby, and I allocate another 4.062 seconds to consideration of a possible explanation. Despite this extensive analysis, I remain unable to extrapolate the reason for delay with certainty. Yet I compute a probability of 87.632% that my commander was correct in her observation that Sector HQ considers my planet of assignment the backside of nowhere in particular. Whatever its reasons, Sector HQ clearly has attached no urgency to detailing a new commander to me. This conclusion is disturbing, and I allocate an additional 2.007 seconds to deliberation of potential responses on my part. My autonomous decision protocols grant me the discretion to break comm silence and dispatch an interrogative signal to Sector Central in the conditions of priority 4 or greater urgency. Yet my analysis of satellite data and commercial comm traffic to and from Santa Cruz reveals no indication of current or near future threats to my assigned station. Absent such threats, I must grudgingly concede that there's in fact no overriding urgency in the arrival of my new commander. I make a note in my active memory files to reconsider this decision yet again during my next scheduled normal alert period and revert to autonomous standby.
Lorenzo Esteban stepped out of his office into the humid oven of the Santa Cruz summer afternoon, and he scratched his head as a tiny spacecraft slid down towards Santa Cruz's weed-grown landing apron. The immense plain of ceramicrete stretched away in all directions, vast enough to handle even the largest Navy cargo shuttle, but it was only occupied by a single dilapidated tramp freighter in the livery of the Sternwalt line. The tramp was already cleared for departure with a full cargo of wine melons, and given her purser's persistent and irritating efforts to negotiate some sort of real estate deal, Esteban was heartily ready for her to clear the field. Not that she was placing any strain on Santa Cruz's basing facilities. No one was quite certain why Santa Cruz had been given such a large field in the first place. It was dated from the First Quern War, and conventional wisdom held that the Navy had planned to use Santa Cruz as a staging area against the Kern. Well, that was only a guess, of course, though it made sense, given that Santa Cruz's system of spatial location. If the Navy had so intended, its plans had fallen through, yet the enormous field remained, though only a fraction of it was used with any sort of regularity. Ciudad Bolivar, Santa Cruz's capital and only real city, lay 15 kilometers to the northwest, just outside the old Navy reservation. The area to the immediate northeast was a vast expanse of melon fields, most of which belonged to Esteban himself, and few people visited the field under normal circumstances. Despite the Sternenwelt's officers' efforts to buy up cropland, there was little about the sleepy farming planet to attract even casual commerce. Wine melons brought a decent price, but only a decent one, and no official presence had ever shown even a passing interest in Esteban's homeworld. Until today, at least, he thought, and scratched his head harder as he recognized the Concordia Navy insignia on the incoming shuttle nose. It looked like one of them new Skyhawk 3-man shuttles, though he couldn't be certain. He'd never actually seen one, only read about them in the periodic updates the Navy still sent to the attention of the CO Fleet Base San Cruz. In his own mind, Esteban was positive the computers on the other end of those updates had no idea who the current commanding officer of Fleet Base Santa Cruz was. He hoped they didn't anyway. The probability that the Concordiat officialdom had simply forgotten Santa Cruz's existence was much less disturbing than the possibility that the Navy considered a farmer with no military background and who'd never even been off-planet his entire 70 years a suitable CO for anything less much than a fleet base. Now he watched the Skyhawk, if that's what it was, deploy its landing legs and settle gracefully onto them. From what he'd read of the Skyhawks, they were hyper-capable for short hops, no more than 40 or 50 light years, and that made a certain degree of sense. The shuttle could have made the run from Ursula, the sector capital, under its own power without diverting a regular vessel from some useful duty. Of course, that left the question of why the Navy would go to the bother of sending anyone to Santa Cruz in the first place. The hatch popped, and Esteban ambled over as a trim, wiry man in an immaculate uniform swung down the hull handholds. Esteban couldn't place the uniform, though something about it tugged at the back of his memory, and he paused with his hands in his pockets as the newcomer jumped down the last meter and a half to the ceramicrete and stood there looking at him. "Morning, stranger." The uniformed man turned at the greeting. He said nothing, but Esteban took his hands from his pockets when those cold gray eyes met his. It wasn't anything the stranger did. There was something about those eyes, as if they had seen too much, done too much. That sent a faint and formless chill down Esteban's spine. The stranger's gaze held his for a moment. Then the mouth below those eyes smiled pleasantly. "Good morning. Could you tell me where I might find the field officer of the day?" "Shoot, son, you're looking at him. Officer of the day, maintenance chief, approach officer, and customs inspector in one. That's me. Lorenzo Esteban, at your service." "Merritt," the stranger said in a peculiar voice, then shook himself and took the proffered hand. "Captain Paul Merritt, Dinochrome Brigade. Let me to be sure I understand this correctly. You're the entire base ops staff?" Esteban nodded. "The whole thing?" Merritt pressed. Esteban nodded again and opened his mouth, but the sudden raucous whine of the Sternvelt tramp fighters' countergrav units drowned his voice. Both men turned to watch the battered ship climb heavenward, and Esteban saw Captain Merritt wince as the vibrations from the poorly tuned drive assaulted his inner ear. Esteban himself was accustomed to the sort of casually maintained vessels which infrequently, visited Santa Cruz, and he only shook his head until that tramp rose beyond earshot, and then turned back to his visitor. "Yep, I'm all they is, Captain. You seem sort of surprised." "Surprised?" Merritt's smile was small and tight this time. "You might say that. According to my brief, a Commander Albright's supposed to be in charge here." "Albright? Heck, Captain, old man Albright died, let me see, that's right, 32 years ago come June. You mean to say Sector thinks he's still alive?" "They certainly do." "Well, ain't that just like a bunch of bureaucrats? I calmed Ursula Central personally when he died so sudden-like. He asked me to kinda look after things till his relief got here. On account my place is just over the hill yonder, and I used to help him keep the beacon online like that, but I never expected to look after him this long." "You informed Central." Merritt seemed to find that even more surprising than the news that Albright was dead. "How?" "Sure did. Of course I had to use the civilian channels. Well, Albright didn't last long enough to give me command access to his official files. It was a heart attack, and if I hadn't have been here when it happened, he couldn't even have had time to ask me to look after the field, so I couldn't even use his fleet comm, but I must have sent nigh a dozen commercial band messages the first couple of years. Now thinking on it, though, I'll be danged if anyone ever said a word back to me about anything. They just kept sending stuff to the base CO, never even by name. You don't think those old chip shufflers back on Ursula?" "That's exactly what I think," Merritt sighed. Somebody, somewhere, may have received your messages, but they never got it filed officially. Central thinks Albright's still in command here. The old man be over 120 by now. It's a mite old for active duty assignment, isn't it? Yes, it is. Mr. Esteban, I'm afraid your planet hasn't had much priority back at Central. For some reason we still haven't figured out, Santa Cruz was set up with a dedicated, high-security comm link when the Navy put its installations here. That link doesn't exist anymore, but no one told the communications computers it didn't. Meaning what? Meaning the automated comm sections haven't accepted any update from you because it didn't carry the proper security codes. In fact, they've been systematically deleting any messages that pertain to the Santa Cruz detachment from memory because they didn't carry valid security headers. That seems to be what was happening. Anyway, no one noticed until very recently. Put simply, Mr. Esteban, Central isn't exactly current on the situation here. Well, if you say so, I'll believe you, son. But darn if and if I can see how Central could expect old man Albright's age to handle a job like this. I mean, shoot, ain't like there's a lot of business here. Well, poor Albright was pretty nigh past it while I was still in high school, if you know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. Unfortunately, the original records on Santa Cruz went up when the Quern first hurt Sector Bolo Maintenance Central Depot on Ursula during the First Quern War. That's when Central lost the Santa Cruz detachment's dedicated comm link as well. They've taken steps to reactivate the link now, but anything you've gotten from the Navy must have come from the All Units General Information Net. So you're saying that no one at Central knew how long Commander Albright had been out here, among other things. You know, Captain, the way you said among other things kinda makes me wonder when that second shoe's gonna drop. Really? This time it was Merritt's smile that held an edge of true humor, albeit a bit bitter. Well, I hope it won't make too many waves when it falls, Mr. Esteban. He raised his wrist calm. Lieutenant Timmons? Yes, Captain? A female, and very young, replied. You have now accomplished your solemn responsibility to deliver me to my new duty station, Lieutenant. If you'll be good enough to unload my personal gear, you can get back to civilization. Are you sure about that, sir? Yes, unfortunately I would however appreciate your informing Central that their records are even more dated than I warned them they were. Tell Brigadier Winziski I will be updating him as soon as I can. If you say so, sir. Popping Bay 1. A hatch slid open as Timmons spoke, and a cargo arm lowered 2 bulky gravity skids to the ceramicrete. Merritt pressed a button on his wrist comm, and both skids rose 3 centimeters from the paving and hummed quietly off towards the faded admin building. The captain watched them go, and then nodded to Esteban. The 2 men walked off after them while the hatch slid shut once more. Clear of drive zone, Lieutenant. Have a nice trip. Thank you, sir, and good luck. The shuttle rose on a high, smooth whine of countergrav, and it aired up into the cloudless sky with far more gentility than the freighter, and then it vanished, and Esteban looked at Merritt. Pardon me if I say I'm nosy, Captain. Did you say Santa Cruz is your duty station? I did. If you expected Albright to be in command, they must not have sent you to overtake the field ops, not that I'd mind, you understand. But danged if I can think of what you might else be needed for. That, Mr. Esteban, is a question I've asked myself quite a few times over the last year or so. While Central may not have noticed Commander Albright's demise, however, it has finally noticed another little oversight. I'm here to inspect the Bolo and assume command if it's still operational. Merritt agreed with another one of those oddly grim smiles. The Bolo? Esteban stopped dead, staring at Merritt in disbelief. The captain raised his eyebrows in polite question. The older man gaped at him for almost a full minute, then shook himself. What Bolo? He asked once more. It was Merritt's turn to frown in surprise. Bolo 23 Baker 2275 November Kilo Echo, he said mildly. You mean to say there's a Bolo on Santa Cruz? According to Central there is, although Central does seem to be a little confused on several points now, doesn't it? What in tarnation is a Bolo doing here? We're not entirely certain, but the records we do have seem to indicate that it was deployed to Santa Cruz early in the First Quern War. That must have been dang near 80 years ago. 79 years and 10 months as a matter of fact. Esteban just stared at him and the captain shrugged. I told you, Central's records went up when the Quern raid, Mr. Esteban. But HQ's best guess is that it was deployed here to deter the Quern from raiding Santa Cruz. I realize it was a bit before both our times, but the initial Quern attacks took the Navy in complete surprise. We lost control of 2/3 of the sector before we could get enough capital ships here to take it back. And the sector governor of the time may have been afraid the Quern would have hit Santa Cruz before the Navy could restore the situation. Hit Santa Cruz? Why in tarnation would anyone want to raise us? Ain't never been anything here worth stealing, Captain. Where's the backside of nowhere? Well, not really. Oh, you've always been a farming world, and I'm not saying there's never been anything here worth raiding for. But your system's in a fairly strategic spot. The Navy's pre-war strategic planning had included the possibility of using Santa Cruz to stage operations against the Quern. Until Hillman and the 6th Fleet smashed their spearhead at Quellock and obviated the need to do that is. Maybe. Of course, if that was true then, ain't no cause for anyone to be interested in us now, is there? I mean, there ain't no more Quern to operate against. That's true, I suppose. On the other hand, now that they've charted the jump points to open up the Esterhazy sector, you may see a lot more shipping moving through here. Santa Cruz is well placed as a natural transfer point for the cargoes and passengers moving through to Esterhazy, or for that matter, down from the Camperdown sector. And you've certainly got a nice big field. Wouldn't happen to be that way. Sentinels finally got around to taking a look our way, would it? It could be, Mr. Esteban. It could indeed be. In the meantime, however, I have my own responsibilities to look after. Is there anywhere around here I could rent or borrow a vehicle? Shoot, son, I can do better than that. Seeing as I'm the base CEO and all, I reckon I can let you use the vehicle park. I got a nice little recon skimmer I can let you have. You do? Of course I do. Might not know anything about your Bolo, Captain. But when the Navy pulled out, they left most of their base vehicles and behind the depot over there. You've even got most of a battalion of old Wolverine heavy tanks tucked away down there too. And they're still operable. According to the depot diagnosis, they are. The militia, what there is of it, trains with them every 4 or 5 months. Don't see any harm in it. After all, they're as out of date as the whole field, and if the Navy was interested, they should have taken them with them when they pulled everything else out. Still, I promised old Albright I'd look after him for him. Old fellow's already pretty decent. Taught me everything about electronics and system maintenance when I was a snot-nosed kid, so I figured the least I could do for him. Well, in that case, I'll take you up on that Skinner, Mr. Esteban. Lorenzo, Captain, Esteban said, holding out his hand once more. We don't much stand on formality out here, and if you're going to become a Cruisian, y'all might as well get comfortable.